All right, let's try to answer some questions about Julian Assange. Well, obviously, I'm not going to be answering questions that you have. I'll be hopefully answering them extemporaneously since I'm not going to be reading while driving. But we are taking a drive to Hershey to pick up the girls. I'm aware of the last 6 or so hours. I've been monitoring the situation online and watching disinformation, misinformation, and pissed off information getting bantied about. It's just out of control. You can't overreact to something that we had to know was going to happen. So I have questions and I have answers. More questions than answers. The gaslighting that is happening now on the questionably situated post-Bernie Trumpers, we'll call them, who are very, very wedded to the concept of Assange seeing no justice whatsoever. That part of the group is really having a full-on meltdown, and that's kind of a predictable thing too. But those tweets are forever, and attacking the president definitively for what is something that is done outside of his purview anyway. Asking the president to preemptively pardon, it's just all silliness, and I will explain to you why that is silliness in a moment. But let us first address the actual charges being brought by the Eastern District of Virginia. There is no charges of dissemination. There is no charges related to hacking into the DNC or Podesta emails or anything of the sort. That is not being addressed in this indictment. He has been arrested due to Mueller's insistence that he could squeeze something out of a Roger Stone. Sure, in the Mueller report that are relevant to other investigations into Assange that did not meet the merit of a grand jury presentment, or if it did, the grand jury did not send back a bill of indictment. So you've got two separate issues here. It's just not the worst news in the world. Assange is essentially being moved from one prison setting to another for now, where he will most likely go on trial. I could see the government possibly wanting to plea out this, but I don't know if they'll be able to get agreeable enough conditions for Assange. Read the actual indictment, which is about as soft of as an indictment as you're ever going to find. I mean, it is a relatively soft presentment. The presentment details the charge is working in conspiracy with then Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning. They have a chat, they have it recorded, where the two of them are discussing hacking into the NSA computers with an anonymous account so that she is not, or he is not, I get this whole Manning thing on me, I'll just call it Manning, so that Manning would be less exposed to being discovered. So this charge against Julian Assange is singular in nature. If there were more, the government would not be hiding it. It is one charge that would yield up to the maximum of 5 years in federal penitentiary. Now, the one thing that the feds constantly use to flip people is they tell people that when you are charged with a federal crime, you go to jail, you are likely to serve 90% of your sentence. They use that as a selling point. The federal government always uses as a selling point that you will serve the length of your sentence. In this presentment, incredibly, they slip in there that it is unlikely that Assange, if convicted, would serve out the full 5-year sentence, which is interesting to me. I've read a lot of their presentments, but I don't remember reading that included in all of them. Here's another little point that everybody should take away. Nobody has a clue what the hell's going on. Obviously, a lot of the Q people are now questioning the whole QAnon thing. Q doesn't want to talk about Assange because Q never did want to talk about Assange. And when QAnon talked about Assange, they talked about certain dates where Assange would be walking free. Assange is already walking free. And Assange's mother would get pissed off about it. And others would get pissed off. I'd get pissed off about it because I know that it's not true. And you know that if you followed me, I've been saying for a year that at the end of the Mueller report, one way or another, Julian Assange will be arrested. The good news here is that there does not appear to be any corollary charges to collusion or interference in our election process or conspiracy to commit some type of fraud against Americans engaged in the election process. There is none of that here. They simply have evidence they believe can be proven without Manning's testimony that Manning is having a discussion, a recorded digital discussion with Julian Assange about cracking that anonymous account at the NSA. So that's problematic. Problematic is a term that a trial lawyer would probably use for this, for Julian Assange. It is not by any means a death blow. If you continue to have no cooperation from Manning, which as of right now they have none, and she's willing to serve jail time for contempt, it's going to be very difficult for them to prove that it was actually a conversation occurring in real time between Assange himself and not somebody else utilizing his computer or his devices. They're going to have, so it's a pretty weak case. It should be pled down. And I can honestly say my prediction will be right now. I want to be on the record right now with this. My prediction is that he has to serve some time in American jails, American federal prison, because our intel community demands it. Like they're full on out, frothing at the mouth, demanding something occur here. The Department of Justice is not so sure. Because the Department of Justice knows that as a part of an exhaustive effort on Mueller's part, that if there was anything that would have indicated that WikiLeaks was responsible for all this other destruction other than dissemination, if they would have hacked the DNC server, if they would have hacked Podesta's emails, anything like that, it would have been uncovered. And it would be part of this presentment. So the DOJ has gone for a very small bite of this apple. If you consider Assange has been locked up in asylum for years, it is my prediction that through trial and then in the middle of the trial, or hopefully quite soon, instead of going to trial, we have a plea agreement. In that plea agreement, the federal judge will agree that his time, well recognized in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, well covered, well documented that he could not leave, very much like a prison-like setting. I believe they will give him what is tantamount to time served for at least a couple of those years in the embassy. So I think what you're looking at here potentially is Julian Assange agreeing to serve 1 year in federal prison in the United States of America, allocuting maybe a tiny little something, but I doubt Assange is going to allocute to anything in court that will further open up Manning. But it's very unlikely because Manning has already served the sentence. So it's very unlikely that there's anything but double jeopardy out there. So I can see that Assange will allocute to something that impacts him, only him, or what has already been prosecuted in the Manning case, so it does not impact Manning. And I think that will suffice. I'm sure the people in the intelligence community will bitch and moan, but I believe that that's not a bad deal because what Assange was staring down was another 2-3 years or worse, waiting for a Democrat president to come in and try to get their pound of flesh off of him. So I'm not sure where the people on the other side are coming from. I want to be very careful how I present this. The Cassandra Fairbanks of the world, the Paul Joseph Watsons of the world, that are just like pushing it into the atmosphere and allowing people to conflate what's going on here with, Assange is innocent. He didn't hack into this and didn't hack into that. Well, the government's not saying any of that. The government is saying that Assange conspired with Manning to use a very specific account, set up an account that could access the NSA information without identifying or leaving a trail back to Manning. They believe they have a digital recording of this conversation. Therefore, they are indicting, and they made that presentment, that they are seeking one charge of that conspiracy to hack into the computers. And for that, ability of a potential 5-year federal sentence, of which they say. I'm saying, because of the extenuating circumstances, the notable worldwide recognition of his essential imprisonment in that embassy in London, that he will be dealt with in a very lenient fashion compared to what it is he has originally been charged to have done. And the Democrats are going to have a hell of a time bitching and moaning about how light his sentence is when he's not being charged with anything related to collusion with Russia or a conspiracy to any way with our election process or working with one campaign or the other. So the Democrats, like Podesta, shouldn't be doing a victory dance. I don't know what they're doing, because the government is presenting a single charge, not related to anything else. Now, is it possible that they bring Assange over and try to roll him over for some information related to the election? That's possible. But you're talking to a man who's already stared down 5 years. I don't think the conditions will be any less comfortable. Matter of fact, they'll be more comfortable for him in a federal prison than they would. So Assange doesn't strike me as a man that you're going to roll over. I don't think the government wants to play chicken with Assange, because they know he has kept certain information at bay so that he could utilize it if necessary, if he is being threatened or attacked or in any way somebody out to do bodily harm to him, which could happen to him in a penitentiary system. So I imagine he will be kept in protective custody, but he will still receive much more freedoms than he would while awaiting trial than he would in the embassy over there in London. So all in all, this is about the smallest bite out of his ass that the U.S. government could have taken. It appears and get the grand jury to bite on at all is this charge on a conspiracy to hack with Manning into the NSA mainframe, because of these digital record of however they recorded the conversation, which is clearly in text. So it's going to be very difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was Assange himself that is communicating with Manning. So it's a very weak trial, at least not for a full trial. I think by the time this act and offer maybe 2.5 years for the 5 years, it'll be a counter offer for 2.5-year sentence, 1.5 years time served already in the embassy due to, like I said, exigent circumstances. And then maybe he serves a year in federal penitentiary somewhere out in Colorado in protective custody so no one can get near him. And then he is free. And then at the end of this, he is free as a bird and he can go. And the United States says, you go your way and we'll go ours. And Assange can get back to the business of doing what he does, having hopefully learned a lesson that you don't conspire to hack into any national security mainframe, and you certainly don't do it by communicating your intentions to do it in writing. So essentially, people seeking to protect the freedom of Assange long term should be celebrating this. They were worrying, they were worrying about capital charges that were going to be brought against him that could result in him being executed. They were worried about all kinds of stuff, and none of that has come to fruition. It's not going to materialize. It is a single charge, one charge that is being brought to him. It is a charge which is relatively flimsy on its face. I would not want to go to trial with it if I were the federal prosecutors, but I believe that we can really easily plead this thing down. And frankly, I think Assange will happily serve 1 year in protective custody in the U.S. federal prison and then being given a plane ticket to go wherever he wants to go, provided I'm sure the probationary terms will be considerable. If he does something else or, releases something else that he feels is punitive against the United States government after he leaves here, I'm sure all those problems could be solved with a probationary agreement. So, long and short of it, this is the least that the United States government could have come after Assange for. The president is not complicit or knowledgeable in any way to be steering this investigation. William Barr did not start this investigation. William Barr did not finish this investigation. William Barr did not okay anything but the presentment of this charge. It is highly likely that William Barr may have struck additional charges that they were desirous to bring in the Eastern District of Virginia. It is entirely likely he decided that this is pretty weak. Let's not make it any weaker by adding additional charges, which the government is wont to do all the time in order to scare you into rolling over. So in short, I will address this more later. Perhaps Glenn and I will address this, or Ginger, on YouTube, on MAGA Coalition YouTube channel. I know a lot of people are upset, but by all means, there's nothing Trump can do at this point in the game or prior to this without triggering obstruction. His own intelligence community will turn on him like a rabid dog again. So that's the long and short of it. I got to run. I just want everybody to know where we're at. It's not the worst thing in the world for Assange. I support Assange 90% of the work that he does, but you can't conspire openly in digital records to hack into the NSA mainframe. So I'll check in with you guys later. So everybody else, calm the hell